Hello! In this video I have two games to show you in what is now my favourite tier 1 ship, and that is the Orlan, which is the new Russian cruiser. And well, there's a few reasons I really like this ship. The first is that it's very fast and very manoeuvrable for a tier 1 ship. The other kind of important reason is that I really like the guns. It's got the same 130mm guns that the top tier Russian destroyers have. And the thing that I like about these guns, especially at tier 1, is that they actually have really good armor penetrating damage on their shells. But their shells seem to be a bit weak in terms of penetration. I say seem because there's no actual way of in-game stat where you can actually look up and see the penetration. But these 130mm guns, they will quite often penetrate the armour of tier 1 ships and hit the citadel, do a lot of damage. But they don't often over-penetrate, which means that with armour piercing you can absolutely wreck most tier 1 ships. The one big downside of the Orlan is that it's got no armour, and when it's got a fair few hit points, they get taken away quite quickly by enemies firing high explosive, which is what most people at tier 1 are firing. I should also say that the addition of this ship, the Orlan, and the Hermelin, the new German tier 1 cruiser, have actually made tier 1 gameplay really interesting for me. Or perhaps not really interesting, but a lot more interesting than it was. To the point where I actually prefer playing tier 1 now than I do playing tier 2. Just because at tier 1 there's actually a reason to choose armor piercing over high explosive, and you have to use your brain a bit. Whereas at tier 2 it's basically all high explosive spam to win. But anyway, let's talk about this game for now. So I'm here in my Orlan, I'm trying to chase down this Hermelin. Oh no, I'm not, I'm firing away at that other Orlan. I was chasing down the Hermelin, and then this other Then this other Orlan appears and starts shooting away at me, and I'm firing high explosive at it because I know the Orlan has very thin armour, and high explosive shells, they usually penetrate and do their usual penetration damage, which as you see there's 528, but they will on occasion actually manage to penetrate the citadel of the Orlan. As I said, it's got very thin armour, and then I believe they will do 1600 damage. I should also mention, while the armour piercing shells on the Orlan are fantastic, the high explosive shells are also not that bad. See, there you go, there's a citadel hit. Did 2100 damage with, I believe, must have been 2 or 3 hits, one of which was a citadel. But yeah, the high explosive shells on the Orlan, they're not particularly strong. They're stronger than the Hermelin's high explosive shells, but not a lot stronger. But they make up for it by actually having a very high chance of fire. And there's a second citadel hit to finish off that enemy ship. And I've lost about a third of my hit points. I did manage to dodge most of the shots that were fired at me, thanks to just the agility of this ship. But now, well, we've kind of won in the north. It's still fairly even though, the enemy have clearly won in the south. And I'm going to go push into A, hopefully force a couple of those enemy ships to turn back and take them out of the fight for a little while. While also engaging this Aerie, which doesn't really seem to be moving. Well, it didn't seem to be moving, but it turns out it's actually moving very slowly. And it kind of seems like it's just firing into the ocean off to my left somewhere. So, I'm not sure what's happening here. Well, it's decided now to start firing at me. And I'm firing armor piercing at it. Because, well, sometimes you can penetrate the armour of the Aerie with this. As you're just there, I got a little bit of damage. I think I got that was an over-penetration. But, and well, I've also managed to get into the engine, so I obviously can penetrate it. But the Aerie, it's slightly angled and it's at fairly long range, so I actually bounce a few shots here, and a few over-penetrate. So in this situation, I was actually probably better to stick with high explosive and just accept that I'm only going to do 500 or 250 damage per hit, as opposed to getting a couple of zeros in here. Especially now that it's turning towards me. I just saw a shell bounce off its belt armor there. I did 826 damage there, which is not too bad. But now it's flat on at short range. Is finally getting a situation where I can put my guns to work. And there's a Citadel hit. And a nice easy kill on that tier 1 cruiser. Well, in the end, once it turned broadside onto me. And so that's what I'm saying, we've got to think a bit more about tier 1 gameplay, is that armour angling's actually kind of important now, because, well, there are people like me around firing armour piercing at you. Especially in the Hermelin, the new German cruiser, which has fairly thick armour. But the armour's not thick enough to keep anything out unless you've angled your ship, in which case it gets kind of effective. Anyway, we're basically won. Well, not quite. I could stay in cap here and probably win, but so I'm going to go get the kill here on the Hermelin and the Harshadate, which are the last 2 ships remaining. Unfortunately, the Hermelin's about to die before I get a chance to shoot at it, which just leaves the Harshadate. And I have armour piercing loaded. I'm still not entirely sure whether it's best to shoot armour piercing or high explosive at Harshadate, but I'm thinking probably armour piercing. I come around the island, aim, fire off 4 shots, and that's the kill. 3 Citadel penetrations there. It also got me the high caliber medal as well as a devastating strike medal, which is kind of nice in a tier 1 game. This next clip's just going to be a short one for you. I've been fighting this Yumikaze, got a couple of hits on it, done a bit of damage. I dodged its torpedoes, and I was thinking of withdrawing because I don't really want to follow it in through its smoke. But I take a look around, see that my team's got the opposite idea and we're all going to push forward, so I figure I'll push forward with them. If nothing else, give the enemy one more target to shoot at. So I turn the ship around, straighten out for a bit to dodge the Samson. See the Yumikaze, but I don't really have shots in it. And I always say Yumikaze wrong, it's Umikaze, but whatever. I'm probably also saying Orlan wrong as well, but we'll manage. Anyway, coming around the corner here, and I see torpedoes from the Umikaze, and I kind of stuffed the dodge there, but torpedo managed to hit my Amarak magazine, which instantly killed me. And that actually happens a lot in the Orlan, and by a lot, probably... it happened twice in probably the 5 games that I played before I decided to put the anti-magazine detonation flag on my ship, which has made it a lot better because that happened quite a bit. This game is the last one I'm going to show you. It is the best game I've had in my Orlan, at least in terms of credits and experience. It's a tier 2 game. The enemy team's about half tier 2s, half tier 1s, and well, even in this kind of matchup, the Orlan can do pretty well. Fire high explosives a lot more than armour piercing, just because protected cruisers are your main opponents, and well, they're very hard to penetrate their armoured decks anyway. Well, I'm firing away to Chester, managed to set it on fire, and I've managed to set it on fire again, and that fire's probably going to burn for a long time if it starts burning at all. But I actually have a feeling that it might have been put out because it just used its repairability. Anyway, I've gone behind this island, so I can't shoot at the Chester now, but there are 2 destroyers converging on me. This one coming up in behind here, which I fired and put 2 shots into. I managed to get another 2 hits from my rear turret, which actually starts a fire. But now the island's in the way of that one, and instead I'm going to have to deal with this other Russian destroyer who's charging through the gap in the islands here. I know it's here somewhere. There it is, at very close range. Actually, I'm within its torpedo range, so I start turning towards it, because I have to assume there's torpedoes in the water. From firing away, my guns are doing their work, just taking away about half its health in 2 broadsides. 2 more hits, and there's its torpedoes coming. Oh no. Okay. I would like to take full credit for that dodge, because that's probably the best torpedo dodge I've ever done in my life. But it was probably just a lot of luck that my swerving around there managed to pull through. But that destroyer is dead. I decided to pull back because I figure I've done my duty to my team, at least in the immediate future. The engine gets destroyed and I repair it quickly so I can get out of here. My team's all moving up to engage the enemies, so I figure once I get around this island, I'll be able to turn back around and re-engage these enemies with no problems. A couple of Dresdens are pushing around the corner, and I add my fire in with the team. Manage to set fire again. but I'll start another fire on Dresden. As I said, the high explosive shells on the Orlan, they're not very powerful, but they do have a very high chance to start fire, so they are quite useful to shoot at the enemy. Now, is this that Chester from earlier? Firing away at it. I get one hit, do 528 damage, which is actually your penetrating damage for your high explosive shells. It's not a lot, but shipped out tier 1, they don't have a lot of hit points, so it will add up fairly quickly. And yet another fire. So as I said, that's where the Orlan's really going to do its damage in terms... Oh, and another one! So that's how you get your damage when you're firing high explosive shells in this. So that enemy ship's not really having a good day. I mean, slowly and steadily losing health, and now my team is basically pushing forward, and it's starting to come under fire from the other side, but I've lost a lot of hit points, so I pull back behind this island so I can break contact. And then come around between this little, well, strait's probably a bit big for it, let's call it the gap between the islands. And plenty of enemy ships to shoot from. I think it looks like I'm shooting at the Dresden at first, but I'll switch fire to the Hermelin. Both of them have a fair few hit points, but I can help erode them, and I've got so much of my team's firepower here from these Dresden, well, this Dresden in front of me in particular, that we're going to build their hit points down. Oh, that ship's still alive and just charging straight in. Oh, I managed to get a hit penetration on something. Must have been the Hermelin? I doubt I could penetrate the Dresden's armour. But anyway, the Dresden's still here, firing away at it. Set of fire, managed to take out one of its main battery guns, which is very nice. Now I'm shooting away at the Hermelin behind it, but it looks like the Hermelin died before my shell arrived. I did put a hit into this Dresden here, which got me the Confederate medal, and then it too dies before my next shell arrives. So far I've got no kills, but I've managed to get 50 odd hits and start 10 fires and the Confederate medal. So I've been doing pretty well for myself up to this point. My team's also been doing pretty well. There are 4 enemy ships still alive, they're basically all in front of us. And what I'm trying to do here is actually trace down this Chester. Unfortunately it's actually at my maximum range, so these shells, they just keep falling short. Luckily for me, the Orlan's pretty fast for a tier 1 cruiser, so I am actually eventually able to shorten this range enough that I will get a couple of hits on this Chester. Just watch as my shells fall short, and adjust my aim a bit more. And I think these ones are going to go a bit to the right as well, and a bit short. Those ones are looking good. Just both a bit short. I think these ones... No, almost. Well, now it's behind an island, but I managed to get hit and set it on fire yet again. Also managed to destroy its engine, but now I can't see where my shots are landing to correct them, and I suspect they're actually probably going a bit long at this point. But, well, that chest is dead. Still at least got one more hit on it. And enemy Orlan's firing away at me. So what I'm doing here is I've actually turned my bow towards it because, well, at this point I hadn't put the anti-detonation flag on, so I want to protect my citadel and my magazine as much as possible. And I know that I can get a citadel penetration with high explosive shells, and basically that's my strategy as much as possible. When it's firing at me, just turn my bow towards it and just aim well with one gun and hope to get those citadel hits. At this range broadside on, I should have a decent chance to do so. Getting kind of unlucky here. Oh, it's looking like it's turning back towards me, but I want to get my shots in. Turn my bow back towards it so I can only fire my bow turret. I should set it on fire. It's just not quite getting the hits I need, but it's kind of doing the same thing to me that I am to it. But I've managed to take its hit points right the way down, so it's actually a fairly even fight. And there's the citadel penetration I've been looking for well, this entire engagement. And by that point, just one of them was enough to get the kill there. And, well, the rest of this game is completely uneventful. I'm start off chasing down the Samson, but it's running away from us. and I'm not going to catch it, and instead I'm going to decide to hang back and capture the base instead of going and trying to kill it. But anyway, that is the Orlan. As I said, it's a very fun ship to play, fast, it's manoeuvrable, it's got good guns. I mean, its penetrating shells have good enough penetration for its tier, and it's good to get citadel hits with them. Its high explosive shells are a bit weak in alpha damage, but they do have a good fire chance, which makes them also very useful. The only real downside to the ship is that its magazines get hit often, and it's also got very little armour, so high explosive shells do a lot of damage to it. But with its speed and manoeuvrability, you can actually kind of compensate that to a degree and still keep fighting and avoid enemy fire. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.